All right, good afternoon, everybody. If I can get you to take your seats, we'll go ahead and get started. The Board of County Commissioners will reconvene. And today, this is just a discussion and update between the BOCC and our Congressman Hurd. And with that, Congressman, I'll turn it over to you, and you can introduce your staff.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Commissioner Candelar. It is terrific to be back here in Montezuma County, seeing lots of friendly faces and folks that I've been working with and continue to and look forward to continuing to work with in the months and years to come. I am Jeff Hurd. I'm the Congressman for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. Proud to be your representative in Congress, and you are my bosses. So, and I will never forget that. Happy to introduce two of the important members of my team. First is Betsy Baer. She is my district director. She used to work for Senator Cory Gardner as his regional director in western and southern Colorado, so she has quite a bit of familiarity with the issues that matter to us in rural Colorado, and she has a lot of experience. She's actually a native Coloradan, and her family has gone back generations, mining family, if I remember. Is that right, Betsy? On one side, that's right. Next to Betsy is Chris N. He is one of my key legislative and policy people, actually from the D.C. office. So I thought it was important to bring someone from Washington, D.C. out here to the 3rd Congressional District to meet with folks, to see the district firsthand and get a sense of what matters to the folks that we represent. His expertise is in agriculture and legislative policy relating to transportation infrastructure as well. So those are the two members of my team that I brought with me, and thank you very much for this welcome. It is great to be here.
Thank you. And with that, I guess we'll just go ahead and jump into some questions, or do you want to just kind of give an update of the first
100 days.
First 100 days.
Yeah. It's been really busy. I will tell you, I've never been elected in elected office before, so it's been quite an experience, humbling, lots to learn, lots to get up to speed on. The key things that I wanted to fill you in on are just from the legislative perspective, my committee assignments. I didn't realize once you get elected to office, you have to run another election, which is one behind the scenes to get committee assignments. And so that's the kind of the ultimate insider race. And I lucked out by getting 3 really good committee assignments for this 3rd Congressional District. The first is the Natural Resources Committee, and I am on the Energy and Minerals Subcommittee. And then I've been named the chair of the Indian and Insular Affairs Subcommittee in the House Natural Resources Committee. So that's obviously important for us here in Southwest Colorado, given that the only 2 federally recognized tribes in Colorado are in the 3rd Congressional District, the Southern Ute and the Ute Mountain Ute. So being chairman of that committee is an honor, and it's something that I'm looking forward to working with our tribal nations in advancing good public policy on that front. And then I mentioned also the Energy and Minerals Subcommittee as well. Public lands issues are essential. I know that's important to folks here in Montezuma County, farmers, ranchers, energy, outdoor recreation, all the folks that enjoy what makes Colorado such a special place to live and work and recreate. So that committee is great for those areas. I'm also in the Transportation Infrastructure Committee in the House of Representatives. I believe I'm the only member of the House in Colorado that is a member of that committee. So that's an important role for not just my district, but our state when it comes to transportation infrastructure issues. Within that within that committee, I'm on 3 different subcommittees. The first is aviation, the aviation subcommittee. I'm also on the roads and surface subcommittee. And there's also a highway reauthorization bill that's coming up this year. That's a big deal. I would love to hear from you commissioners what infrastructure issues, roads, bridges, highways, what sorts of priorities you have. Please help me identify those for my team so we can make sure we do what we can to leverage those federal resources. And then the last is water infrastructure. I'm also on the water infrastructure subcommittee in transportation infrastructure. That's, again, water infrastructure. Water is the lifeblood of the West. We all know that here. And Commissioner Copenhaver, you know that for sure as somebody that's been involved in ag for decades. And so that's also something that I'm looking forward to working with you all on, is identifying those water infrastructure projects that are important to Southwest Colorado. The last committee I'm on is Science, Space, and Technology, which is basically the civilian, non-DOD side of space. And I did not realize how much aerospace we have in Colorado, including in the 3rd Congressional District. There are some aerospace and aeronautics-related industries that we have here, so working with them is something that I also look forward to as well. Legislative policy work that I've been doing, I've introduced legislation, a couple things that might be of interest to you all here in Montezuma County. The first is moving legislation that would move the Bureau of Land Management headquarters back to Western Colorado. You may recall that under President Trump's first term, he moved the BLM headquarters to Grand Junction. President Biden moved them back to Washington, D.C. My legislation would permanently relocate that headquarters in Western Colorado in Grand Junction. The idea being that we should have the people who make the decisions about our public lands management here in the West, where the public lands are located. I think that's good public policy, and it's also makes for a more responsive government agency. When you're working with and shopping with the people whose decisions are affected by what you're doing, I think that's a really important thing to have, and that legislation would do that. I'm also doing legislation in the public lands realm, legislation that would reverse 9 of the Biden-era resource management plans that were handed down, and make sure that we are responsibly using our federal lands and that we're fulfilling the multiple use mandate that ensures, yes, conservation, but also energy development, agriculture, and making sure that the folks who rely on the land are able to use that land. Wildfire forest management, I've been involved in legislation. My first speech on the House of Representatives, on the floor of the House of Representatives, was related to forest management and improving forest management. The Fix Our Forest Act is an important piece of legislation when it comes to permitting reform and making sure that we're responsibly managing our public lands. Good forest management is also good watershed management. And advancing sound public policy in that area is also something that's very important to me. Other legislative issues I've been working on, I've taken a strong stance on the Second Amendment. That's something that I know folks, I suspect here in Montezuma County, that they value that as well, and they're concerned like I am with some of what we're seeing on the state level with respect to the Second Amendment. So making sure that we stand up on that, on the Second Amendment issue, protect that individual right, and see what we can do on various pieces of legislation that I'm working on. Happy to get into any of those if you have questions on that. One other issue I would be remiss, we have our hospital director here, Joe, is rural health care. And that was something that I took seriously when I was running for office, making sure that we have the resources in rural Colorado to provide the health care that we need and rely on, and making sure, as we're discussing in the Republican-controlled House and Senate and the presidency, making sure that rural health care continues to be a priority, and that as we're making adjustments in policy when it comes to savings or when it comes to revenue generation, that we're doing so in a way that's responsible for those who rely on the critical health services that we have here in rural Colorado, our critical access hospitals, our federally qualified health centers, and others who are essential to that healthcare delivery system here in southwest Colorado. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Those are the main points. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. The most important thing from my perspective is listening to my county commissioners and hearing what you all have to say about your priorities, what we can be working on together in Washington, particularly when it comes to protecting water, protecting agriculture. I'd be curious to see if you have any thoughts on the National Conservation Area, the Upper Dolores National Conservation Area, where you are on that. I know that's a piece of legislation that I'm looking at very carefully. And if there are any other issues in ag, in energy, in outdoor recreation, any of those issues, I am all ears, and I want to listen. I'm happy to provide more information, but I think with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Commissioner.
Okay. Well, let's jump on public lands first, and then I'll just go down my list, and then I'll actually turn it over to my other two commissioners. So, public lands, a big deal to us here in Montezuma County. Obviously, we have 72.5% of Montezuma County is public lands. So, with the reauthorization bill for SRS, because that affects not only our transportation, road and bridge, but it also affects our schools. The 25% that's to road and bridge, 25% that's to the schools. Where do we stand with that? When we were back in Washington late February, early March, we did have a speech from, I think, Senator Wyden, and they were still looking at the reauthorization, but as far as I know, to this date, nothing has been decided. Where do we stand with the reauthorization of SRS?
It's still in process. I'm on that legislation that would reauthorize that SRS funding. I know that that's a priority here in Montezuma County. It's also a priority all the way up in the northwest part of the state in Moffett County as well. Working to get that through. I don't have an update other than it's moving at the speed of, unfortunately, our federal government right now. I do know the importance of SRS and making sure that we have those resources that counties like Montezuma County rely on. And so we will be working to push that forward. I don't know, Chris, if you have an update on SRS funding beyond what I've got. It's in the process. It's things like the Farm Bill, SRS. Those priorities are probably going to come after the budget reconciliation process. I will tell you that's the president's number one priority. That's the number one priority for Republican leadership in the House and the Senate, is advancing our reconciliation budget framework forward. We did pass a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. I will tell you I'm not a big fan of continuing resolutions. I think the government ought to go through regular order. We ought to have 12 separate appropriations bills that we pass in the House and then the Senate and then the President signs. I've been told by leadership that that is the plan for the next year. We'll have to see exactly how that works out. But things like secure rules, secure funding for schools, SRS, those things are probably going to come a little bit later in the legislative session after we've done the budgeting process.
Okay.
But it's a priority for me for sure.
Is PILT
Perfect.
funding in there also?
I don't believe PILT funding is in the reconciliation bill right now. I don't know, Chris, if you know that. We can follow up with you, Commissioner, on that and see if PILT funding's in there. With that, though, I'm curious, where is Montezuma County on PILT funding?
So, again, with the information that we had when we were back in Washington, again, PILT has to be reauthorized every year,
Yes.
annually. And it hasn't been done even for last year. So the PILT payments that we typically get or SRS are typically coming by now, which obviously without the reauthorization, they have not shown up. So my bigger concern is if the SRS goes away and the PILT goes back to the 64%, I mean, right now, Montezuma County gets 48 cents per acre for our PILT funding, which this is a lot bigger question, which I'm going to bring it out there. But at some point in time, shouldn't we readdress these calculations of how they do that? Because it just doesn't, I mean, I wish everybody could pay 48 cents an acre, but it really, that math just doesn't work out. So the math has to be at least looked at some point in time for the PILT calculation also.
I've heard that loud and clear from a number of our county commissioners as well, particularly those counties that have a population number that's not as large, that they end up getting penalized by the PILT formula. I would be curious, it will help me with my arguments to know, does the Montezuma County Board of Commissioners, do you all have, or does the county, I guess, have an estimate of the number of dollars that you spend or resources that you spend on federal lands issues, and then we can look at that versus what you get in your PILT funding? That might help me with
Okay.
when it comes to that
We
funding
can-
issue.
We can put that together and get that for you for sure.
And I don't know, because I suspect the answer is you are spending a lot more in resources on federal lands issues than you're getting in PILT funding.
Well, we are, but part of that's because of that formula where the mineral lease cuts down our PILT tremendously. Even though we have all these impacts from the mineral lease, it's cutting our PILT down tremendously. So that formula, the way that formula's set up, like Archuleta County over here doesn't have hardly any mineral lease, so they get way more PILT money than we do. But they don't have those impacts from the mineral lease like we do in this area. So that formula set up basically that way to cut down your PILT funding if you got a lot of mineral lease money, but you have those impacts from that mineral lease stuff too. So it's we've always felt that it was not very fair, and I know there's a way to get out of doing that if you form a different group to accept your mineral lease money, and I forget what you call it.
Yeah, I know
Anyway,
what you're talking
you have to
about,
set
but
up another board to accept the mineral lease money and give it out as grants, but the commission doesn't have control of that. You're
Right.
just, you have to,
Gar-
I forget what they call it
Garfield
now.
County, I think, is about one of the only counties in the state of Colorado that actually has one of those set up, that I'm aware of. There could be others,
Mesa County
Mesa
does as
County.
well.
or Mesa County does now too. So, well, right next to Garfield County, so,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there would be neighbors talking to neighbors. I guess, again, my question is just, how do we relook at those formulas and those calculations? I mean, these things are decades old, and it just doesn't seem equitable to us in smaller rural counties that have so much federal lands.
Can you tell me, Commissioner, give me something concrete that I can go back to my fellow legislators with? If you could wave a magic wand and change one or two things with respect to the PILT funding for the PILT formula for funding, what would be the most impactful changes we could look at?
Well, I can tell you right now, if you just knew that you were gonna get 100% of what it's supposed to be every year, so you could actually budget for that, that would help tremendously, just that fact that you knew you were gonna get that 100% every year, because when I was on this commission before, at one year, we got 10%. So you never could really budget any amount for that. If you just knew what you were gonna get, if you were gonna get that 100% every year, at least you could budget for it.
Got it.
And I guess that would be my biggest takeaway also, because even though we're using this old formula and calculation, if we knew had an assurity that we did get that fully funded every year, it would be at least something that we could budget for and a real number. Otherwise, we're always guessing. It's like, well, like right now, are they going to go back to the 64% or not? Because it's really hard to put numbers together for what we're trying to do. And again, as it relates to transportation, because of what we get off of our federal lands, we have a ton of transportation needs and I'm not discounting what we have on our federal lands as far as the resources and the recreation that we have, because I love them and what it brings to this county. But there is an impact to everything that we do, and we do have good working relationships with our federal partners, the BLM, the Forest Service, and we work together, with them to try and do the very best that we possibly can. But if we at least had a number that was, I don't want to say guaranteed, but at least an assurity that we would have 100% of that PILT funding, we could actually put a real number and put our budget process and have something that's concrete.
This is not an issue that's limited to PILT, this lack of predictability. I was in a meeting with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and one of the members of Congress asked, what can we in Congress do to help with military readiness and preparedness? And his answer was, please just pass a budget that we can, that we know how things are going to look going forward, and that we can plan, and that we can know that we have some assurance that those dollars are actually going to come and what they are.
Yep.
So this is something that I've certainly heard outside of the PILT context as well. And I'm going to take this back. Let me see what we can do. It sounds like it's more of a system-wide problem with our federal government, the inability to budget and allow for other governmental entities to prepare and to budget themselves with an expectation that these dollars will be coming. So let me take this back and see what we can do on that PILT issue.
Okay.
Do we know what committee PILT comes through? Is that Natural Resources? Do we know? Okay, I'll look. It could be Ways and Means.
Okay.
That will be another issue that, let me see what we can do on that front. But I understand the frustration about the variable numbers that come in and that lack of predictability, and it's something that I've heard in other areas as well.
Great. Perfect. I appreciate that. Then I'll move on to, let's talk about water. And Commissioner Copenhaver will probably be, well, he's by far more knowledgeable about water than I ever thought of being, but I'll start the conversation. So as far as it refers to the NCA, the National Conservation Area, I know that it's been, or I believe it's trying to get reintroduced. I don't think it has to this point in time, but do we need to be doing something more? I mean, I know that the group that has been working on this would reach out or answer any questions that you all might have.
Yes, Commissioner Candelario, first, thank you for, when you visited in Washington DC, I know you mentioned this is one of the top priorities for the county commissioners here. I believe that on the Senate side, Senator Bennett is going to be introducing the NCA for the Upper Dolores. I would be his House counterpart. We're close on that legislation. We're just checking to make sure that there aren't any unintended consequences with respect to mining and the possibility of responsible mining in the future. I know that that's something that has gone through a stakeholder process for decades, I believe. I have heard a few concerns we just need to run down and just make sure, and obviously I would work with you all as key stakeholders to make sure that any of the issues that are identified, that we navigate those. But it's my hope and intention that we will have an NCA bill introduced as soon as possible. We just need to run down a few things with respect to some of the, just to make sure that there aren't any unintended consequences with respect to potential mining claims.
Okay. All right. We did have a town hall last night, and there were some questions on that, and we were doing our very best to explain to people that they have to have a valid and existing right, which is in the language that currently exists, because we are not trying to move mining out. But again, the NCA, the way we have it planned, is only about 14%, correct? I think it's right at 14%. But again, until they validate those rights, you don't know if that's the richest mineral or if there's no mineral at all within that 14%. So appreciate that. And again, we are not against mining at all, but mining has changed since the olden days to where we currently exist now. So there's a lot of differences in the mining industry, for sure, as one of your staffers down there could probably talk about.
Absolutely. The mining that we do nowadays is very different than it was in the past. And I know that all of you, like me, care about clean air, clean land, clean water, and responsibly mining, and that when it comes to these resources and resource extraction, that we need to do so in an environmentally responsible way. Mm-hmm. And that we need to have, again, we talk about this predictability issue, making sure that the companies that are operating have regulatory predictability and stability and rational, reasonable regulations that guide them, but that we hold them accountable as well. And when they don't abide by the law or by their expectations under whatever environmental regulations we may have, that we hold them accountable. That's something that I take seriously, and I know you do as well. We can find that balance, though, and I know you guys know that. I know that as well, between conservation and land management and responsibly utilizing these resources that are truly an asset for the people that live here in Southwest Colorado and in the 3rd Congressional District. One of my first, when I first entered the House of Representatives, I told you I'd never been elected anything before, and the Speaker of the House took us on the floor of the House, and he was showing us all of the things in the House of Representatives. This is where FDR had almost declared, or asked Congress to declare war. On December 8th, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor, he came to Congress and asked Congress to declare war, and this is where all these leaders in history have spoken. And he was pointing out certain things in the room, in the floor of the House of Representatives. And one of them was, the "In God We Trust," which is above the Speaker's rostrum. There's also "E Pluribus Unum," which is the national motto in Out of Many One. But there was another plaque that he pointed to, which is way above the Speaker's gallery, which is a quote by a congressman named Daniel Webster from the 1900s. And it's a great quote that struck with me, and I think I've mostly memorized it. And the quote talks about what we're trying to do in Congress and what it means for me to be representing you in Congress. And his quote was, "Let us develop the resources of our land, call forth its powers, build up its institutions, promote all its great ideals, and see whether in our day and time we may do something worthy to be remembered." And that's something that I found a lot of inspiration in developing those resources of the land, building up our institutions, calling forth our country's powers, and seeing whether or not we can do something worthy to be remembered for the good of the people that we represent. So that's something that I look forward to advancing, and I know this NCA is a part of that, and managing our multiple use mandate under the Federal Lands Management Policy Act of 1976 is something I take as an important priority as well. And sorry for that rambling discursion there, but it was a really neat thing. And when you talk about what are we trying to accomplish in Congress and what does success mean, like for the people here in Montezuma County, that quote right there really encapsulates it for me.
Mm-hmm. Nice, appreciate it. So do you have any more
Well,
questions
On
on
water,
that?
yes, where
Commissioner?
we,
okay, I think a little history as to why we started to develop that NCA. That started in '08, basically is when we started meeting to develop that. We were afraid we were gonna have a monument, just like what's facing the lower Dolores right now. We were afraid we were gonna have a monument. That was the direction it looked like it was heading at that time. That's why we formed the group to start working on an NCA, something besides, because we've got a monument out here that we have nothing to say about. That had some grazing allotments and stuff in it, and some private ground dispersed through it. A lot of things have happened since that monument's been out there that haven't been very well managed in my mind, but we don't have anything to say about it.
They didn't hold to their obligation.
And actually, that monument got formed because groups right here in this county were fighting over whether we should have an NCA or we should have a monument.
Or nothing.
Yeah. Anyway, basically, there was conflict within the community as to what should be what. And all of a sudden, we had a monument. We didn't have any choice about it, and it was written out, and they hired a planner to do the plan for it, and they actually had a planning group, and when it all got done, the plan writer that was supposed to take the stuff from the planning group and put it into the plan quit. And basically, they hired somebody else to write the plan, and it was done. And she wasn't even from around this area. So what's happened out there, we didn't want to happen again. And that's why we started working on this NCA and trying to do something to get the wild and scenic off of that river. Because every time they've studied the wild and scenic on that river to find if it's still suitable, they come up with some more outstanding, remarkable values.
Yep.
And this last time they studied it, one of them was one of the 3 fish of the threatened species. Our concern was if that one of those ever get listed, that they would take water, because the fish needed water. And so that's what we were concerned about, that we needed to get that wild and scenic off of there. So it was our main concern, to get the wild and scenic off there so there would be no more studying as far as outstanding, remarkable values that could take water away from us.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my main fight, why I was in that, why we started, and I've worked on it all this time, just to try to get that wild and scenic off of there.
And I think collectively that with the group, because it's a pretty diverse group over the period of years to get to where we've gotten to today, that, I mean, it speaks volumes of what you can do if you actually sit down at the table. Not everybody got everything they wanted, but I think it's something that's agreeable to everybody, that everybody can live with.
no, that's, thank you, gentlemen. The message I'm taking here is let's do what we can to finalize this and take it to the finish line. I'm going to take that back to my team, and let's see how quickly we can move. 2 other things. First, Commissioner, you're exactly right. We should not make the perfect the enemy of the good. And we can have our principles. I'm a conservative, but I'm also pragmatic, and we don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. And we need to realize the fact that it is possible under the Antiquities Act of 1906 that a future president could unilaterally just designate this land a monument and lock it off. That is very problematic, and that's another piece of legislation that I'm actually co-sponsoring, would remove the president's unilateral authority under Section 2 of the Antiquities Act of 1906 to unilaterally designate land as a monument. And I will tell you, the moment that I knew that that was the right public policy was when I was talking with someone a little bit further north in Montrose County who was talking about the paralyzing uncertainty of not knowing whether or not a president with a simple stroke of the pen was going to take hundreds of thousands of acres of land and lock it up, and how it made economic development extremely difficult. It made planning difficult. It made just the uncertainty of not knowing whether or not a president wanting to advance his legacy or her legacy would just unilaterally lock off land. That was something that it catalyzed for me the importance of making sure that decisions with respect to public lands management have stakeholder buy-in from the people that are affected by those decisions. And I understand and see that that's what you have here in this NCA, and that's something that I think is worthy of pushing forward.
Yeah,
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
good job.
Well, we're talking about that. One more question that I have that, when I started here in 2019, we have some WSAs, some wilderness study areas that were supposed to have been studied for, I think, a period of 5 years. And then they made the determination of whether they were presentable for a wilderness area. But we have one sitting right over here to the east of us that still is a WSA. And I guess my question is, what can we do to get these? The BLM has already stated that it is not suitable for a wilderness area. So why do we continue to have these and have these almost be a threat to the communities, or not a threat, depends on how you want to look at it. But when they've already studied it and says that they are not suitable for that, why does it take so long to get those removed?
That is a great question. What is the name of that WSA?
What's that?
Menifee, the WSA
Over on
over here to
Menifee
the
Mountain?
east, it's on Menifee Mountain, right?
That's on what they call Bobcat.
I'll find
Okay.
that for sure.
If you
for
can find that for me, Commissioner, send that to me. If you have the underlying documentation of where the Department of the Interior, the BLM, said that this is not suitable for
Okay.
a wilderness study area, that is exactly the sort of thing that we need to be following up on. I am concerned about these backdoor landlocking federal policies that allow bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, to simply lock off federal land and take away that multiple use mandate and the responsible use of those lands for the public. So definitely an issue of concern. I've heard that not only with the wilderness study areas, but sometimes also the ACECs, the areas of critical environmental concern. That is also a similar issue. When these decisions are made and they're made by an unelected bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., and they're lacking in justification, it causes me serious concern, and that's exactly the sort of thing that we will follow up on. So please help me identify what that WSA is, and if you have the underlying documentation from the Bureau of Land Management about that not being suitable for such a designation, we will take that and run with it.
And I will get that to you. You'll have it shortly.
And thank you for, that's the sort of thing, this is the value of these meetings right here, is raising these issues. Please let me know what that, because there's a lot of things going on in this district. It's huge. It's half of the state of Colorado, the landmass. So I need you all to help me be the eyes and ears of our constituents to make sure that when there are issues like this where government isn't doing its job, that we follow up on it. And if it's the federal government, that's my responsibility, and Senator Bennett's responsibility, and Senator Hickenlooper's responsibility to move those issues forward. So thank you for flagging that. Please follow up, and we will push on our end.
Yep. And again, I want to thank you for working with Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper, because they have been actually, working with us on this NCA also. So I don't want that to go unsaid. Thank you for working with them. I appreciate that, because for us, it's a big deal to try and get that across the finish line. So anything else, commissioners, on that?
No.
I'll switch gears. And if there's anything else you want to say, just shout out. So, rural health care, that was one of the items that we talked to you about when we were back in Washington as Colorado counties. We had specific questions that we did ask of the entire group while we were out there, one of them being that. And we did get a update yesterday from Joe Thine, which that continuing resolution has been done until September. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, which helps us out here in rural Colorado with our health care. Because for us, if something catastrophic was to happen with our rural hospital, it would affect us all in this community greatly. Not just this community, but I think we go across the border, even into Utah and some of the outerlying areas there. So it is a concern to us, just whatever you can do on those grounds to help us with that. We are not the front range, and we don't have all of the capability, but we do have a lot, because people that are here expect the same quality of care that they get in the front range or in a larger metropolitan area. So any help with all of that, I greatly appreciate it, and I think I can speak for that, for the hospital here, and everybody else in our community. It is a concern, and I think we have a great small rural hospital, and we get a lot done with what we have. So-
And is the hospital that's here, that's a critical access hospital, correct? Okay. Well, I know Medicaid is a critical piece of that delivery, and the reimbursement rate for critical access hospitals, I believe, is cost with, hold on, didn't the state increase the reimbursement rates for Medicaid by 1.6%?
They did. The JBC did allow that, and we were given that yesterday. It was 1.6%, so the state is realizing it also, which is great.
Yeah.
Because I know that they were having some major cuts that they were trying to fix this year of like $1.2 billion that they were trying to cut.
Right.
The JBC. So, you know,
Do you have labor and delivery here? Is there maternity care?
we do.
You do? Okay.
Mhm.
I assume that's also outside of Cortez. Where's the nearest labor and delivery hospital? Do we?
Probably La Plata
Montezuma.
County.
La Plata County.
San
Okay.
Juan County, Utah.
San Juan County, Utah. Okay. Understood, and I appreciate that. And I know that making sure that that's been something that's been a discussion in the House of Representatives when it comes to the reconciliation process and what's happening with respect to specifically the Energy and Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over healthcare matters, and the instructions that have been given to realize savings on the order of $880 billion over 10 years. I know that there's concern about what that means for rural healthcare, and my priority is making sure that we do everything we can to protect rural healthcare, those that rely on Medicaid the most, that are at the core of what Medicaid is protecting. I will tell you, when I look at this from the perspective of a policymaker as well, making sure that we use those dollars well and effectively to deliver services is important. Medicaid spending has increased pretty dramatically in the last decade, and making sure that we use those dollars in the most effective way, particularly here in rural Colorado, is something that's important. And I'm actually supposed to have a talk with somebody on the Energy and Commerce Committee later today, just to make sure that I understand what's going on. I'm not on that committee. That's not one of my committees of jurisdiction, so I'm sort of on the outside looking in when it comes to some of those changes. But I may certainly need your help in making sure that as that policy winds its way through that committee, that we're protecting the most critical services that we're providing here in Southwest Colorado at the hospital.
Okay. Anything else on that, gentlemen?
No, just that we touch 3 states, 2 Indian reservations, and we provide a lot of care in this area.
Yeah.
Let's see, one other thing that I did want to just make a comment on, and it was actually done in our public comment session this morning. I'm not sure where the cuts to the education portion are, but to the Head Start program specifically, and the return on investment of $4.30 to every $1 that's spent for childcare. That's a pretty good return on investment, and I don't know where we at with that, or if you have anything that you can even specifically give us on that.
I will need to circle up with you and to get the specifics on Head Start funding issues. I am not as close to that. I've heard some of the concerns that you're sharing as well. I need to follow up to get the specific details and see what the status of that Head Start funding is like. But I've certainly heard from others as well concern about potential cuts there.
Okay.
And let us follow up and see on our end what we can find.
Okay. And the name of that WSA is the Menifee Mountain WSA, and I will get you the follow-up documentation from the BLM.
Great.
You'll
Thank
just have
you.
to give me a minute to research a computer.
Great. Thank you.
I'm trying to go through my head my notes of the town halls and the coffee with the county that we've been having, but I think we've hit the highlights.
I need to bring up one thing on transportation.
Okay.
As you go out of Cortez, heading south, right here now, down Broadway, we're getting quite a bit of development down south of town right now. And I'm sure if you came from out toward Dove Creek, you passed a lot of trucks coming down here. We have a tremendous amount of truck traffic going from 70 down to 40 coming through here. And that corridor from when you drop out of Cortez down to that love station down there where the port of entry is, goes across the bridge there that's just 2 lanes, so they've never, it needs to be expanded to 4 lanes. That's what it needs to be. We've just got so much traffic down there. I came up that road the other day, and literally from that love station, it was solid cars all the way to the top of the hill, one right behind the other. And there's just a tremendous amount of traffic on that for as many trucks as we have. We need something done with it, and the state of Colorado has not got it on their priority list at all, I don't think.
Can I ask?
don't know if you have any influence over that.
Sure. Let's see what we can do. What I would ask you as commissioners is to please help me identify what your priorities are here in the county when it comes to transportation infrastructure. I do have the ability in Congress to look at projects, congressionally directed spending, and also to help with grants to see what we can do to identify those priorities. What I need from you all is a list of what the most effective use of taxpayer dollars are, because ultimately I have to justify to you, my constituents, the use of those federal dollars for the right project. If it's for an art project in a bus station, I'm probably not going to be in support of that. But if it's for roads, bridges, expansion, capacity issues, asphalt, concrete, roads, that is something that I am very interested in. And what I need from you all is a list of what those priorities are and ways that we can leverage those federal resources to deliver on those infrastructure projects.
You want to hear the big ask?
So, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah, let me hear the big ask.
We would like to see, I would like to see, I'm sure these other guys, but anytime there's an incident on I-40 or I-70, all that traffic dumps right through here. I mean, right down that highway. Given the situation of that highway, I would like to see a 4-lane highway from Gallup, New Mexico to Crescent Junction to relieve that. And it's an identified heavy hazmat route too. There's a lot of hazardous material that travels that road.
which would go through 3 states, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a big area, which,
I just had a little bitty
but
ass.
locally,
I mean,
locally, I'm going to say
What?
a little bitty ask like Commissioner Copenhaver, which serves not only Montezuma County, but also with the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, is that's not a CDOT affected roadway, highway, is our County Road G that ties, which CDS would be, I think, a priority for some of that. We put some calculations together, and it would be between 12 and 14 million to tie or to fix that road from County Road, well, basically 21 down. So it would be about 21 miles, 22 miles, which ties a lot through the Ute Mountain Ute Reservation and then back into Montezuma County. It's a heavily trafficked highway from the Ute Mountain Utes, from all of the people that live down the canyon, and it's a segue for Utah to get into Colorado.
This is County Road G?
County Road
Yes.
G.
Okay. If you could put this in writing and send it
Mhm.
along, and if you could prioritize what is most important, that would be really helpful from my perspective. And Chris, what's our timing? I'm going to look and see. What is our timing for submitting these projects? Is it May 2nd? Is that our,
So we have two.
or do you need to press the button? You might need to press the button.
There you go.
We have two internal deadlines, and it depends on the subcommittee. I know for transportation, housing, and urban development, the deadline would be May 16th.
May 16th.
So that would be all your surface, highway, road infrastructure projects.
Yeah. That-
We also, every 5 years, we do a surface transportation reauthorization. The last time that was done was in the bipartisan infrastructure law, so that's coming up. That's going to expire, and we're looking at doing a reauthorization through the committee. So any policy changes that you need with regards to roads, bridges, you know, how formula funds are distributed, you know, any sort of discretionary grants, you know, feel free to let us know. And our deadline for our portal request is May 8th.
So Chris actually his former boss was a guy named David Rouser, who you've probably never heard of. He's a congressman from North Carolina. Great guy. He's also currently the chairman of the subcommittee on surface transportation in the House of Representatives. So he's the guy that can help make sure that we identify those right projects and we push them forward. So
Okay.
please let us know how we can help.
All right. Well, that was my little bitty ask, and I'll let Commissioner Copenaver get to his little bitty ask.
It just, you know, that section from right here out of town down to there is just very concentrated with traffic. I'm sure you could talk to those two men back there and they would tell you that it's a serious problem.
And we actually
And this
do
whole
have
road-
that.
This whole road going out toward Dove Creek in the wintertime is always a problem.
On our TPR plan with the city of Cortez, we've both identified that to try and get that done. But again, Region 5, CDOT's Region 5 is the least funded in the state of Colorado, which I realize is not your issue, but from regions, you know, this region is the lowest funded that there is. But just like Commissioner Lindsay said, when you get anything closing on I-40 or I-70, it all pushes because it ties, that highway ties those two interstates together. And it goes through 3 states.
Well, it's very rare that I would disagree with you, Commissioner Candelaria, but I must say it is my issue. I know Region 5
Okay.
is a state,
Yeah.
Well,
it's a
perfect.
state transportation region, but if it affects Southwest Colorado, it is my issue.
Okay.
And I will tell you, I'm going to work with Shoshana Liu, CDOT Commissioner, and her team. Let's see what we can do to make sure that those projects have the resources that they need here in Southwest Colorado. I mean, this is a core function of government.
Mhm.
And let's see how we can help from a federal perspective to leverage those dollars and then make sure that the state is also adequately providing the resources that you all put into the state funding system, because you all pay the taxes and fees that are ultimately transferred to CDOT, and I think you deserve to get a fair share back.
Okay.
Are there any other water infrastructure issues that you all are aware of?
Yeah, there's lots of them.
You are, okay. So maybe you guys can talk afterwards. I see somebody here, one of my friends here, knows a little bit about some water infrastructure projects. Maybe you can put your heads together and see if there's something there that we can look at as well. The other one is law enforcement. If there are any law enforcement needs that you have here in the county, I guess I should talk to the city to see if the city has law enforcement needs as well in terms of resources, equipment, metal detectors, firearms, weaponry, any of those things. Please let me know. This is a little bit tight on the timing. We've got a couple weeks, I think. There's a window that's going to be closing with some so-called COPS grants. And I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect and help law enforcement. So the guys that are here keeping us safe and putting their lives on the line for us, I think they should have all the equipment they need to do their jobs. And so let me know if there are law enforcement needs at the county level that you have. And then I'd be grateful also if you could, if the city, or maybe we can reach out to the city also, but if you happen to have an easy way of knowing if the city of Cortez has any of those needs as well, let us know, and we will try to push those forward on the law enforcement front.
All right. Very good.
And I think those are all my notes. Hold on, let me just make sure that I'm not missing anything. Drought resilience, are you feeling okay, Commissioner Copenhaver, on where we are?
I think most of the farmers and ranchers are. We've been through this enough now. Most of them are actually preparing for seasons like this, where we're going to be short on water for part of it. But most of the ranchers and farmers here, they've been through enough of this that they're preparing themselves for it and take care of themselves. They do. I mean, it's their nature, I guess, because they do. They pretty much plan ahead, and they know there's gonna be tough years like this. And they carry over hay, and they do what they need to do to make it through these bad years. So, really, you know, as far as until they came out with like this rain insurance and stuff, there wasn't much in the farm bill that really helped people that actually are growing forage crops or raising cattle and that sort of part of the industry. There wasn't much in the farm bill that actually helped any of those people. They did put that rain insurance, well, I call it rain insurance. I don't know what else you call it. They put that in there a few years ago, and there's been some use of that product to help people get through some rougher areas, you know, and stuff. But for the most part, I think we're doing okay as far as that industry goes in this area.
Gerald?
Cindy, you're
Yeah, well, the ones that have been doing it long enough to figure it out, like,
yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah.
Gerald, would you speak to the savings that could be had by piping a lot of our ditches?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna talk to him about.
Yeah.
We've actually been studying our ditches, you know, our canals and stuff. Most of them are over 100 years old and lose a tremendous amount of water out of them. Anywhere from 10 to 30% is just seepage loss out of those canals. If we had the money to fix that, we would have a lot more of our most precious resource, water to either leave in the river or in the lake or whatever, because we wouldn't be losing so much of it. But when you have to we turn down our canals 30-40% extra just to make sure that we can deliver everybody's water down that canal. That's a lot of water. And don't get me wrong, a lot of it is seeps and it comes back out and runs off. Somebody else is using it on down the deal, but it's not a very efficient way to do it. If you could get enough, that's the thing with most mutual ditch companies. They don't have the resources to put out that kind of money. We got 2 Water Smart grants to do 2 sections of our canals, just some tail ends of our canals. And it was $7 million to do those 2 little projects. And we're just going through the process of getting those put together right now. We've got going through the environmental process and getting it all permitted and everything ready to go. But it's been at least 2 years when we got those grants,
Yeah.
and it's taken this long to even get to this point.
Okay.
And we have lined some of our bigger canals through the Bureau of Reclamation, and we're working on some of those, but unless it is under the salinity, we really can't get enough help to do those. We just don't have the money to do that, those type of projects, because they're so expensive.
Which,
The amount of money that it would cost to do the improvements and to the part that they is gonna get paid for through grants or other places, the users, they can't come up with that grant much.
Yeah. Cindy
Thanks,
worked
Cindy.
for the NRCS for years.
And then the Colorado Water Conservation Board, there was a bill that came out, and I saw that the North Cooter got a huge amount of money, but I think it was partially a loan that had to be paid, but for us around here, that was, it was a third-year note, it's something to think about.
Okay. Make sure we fund that revolving fund as well is something that's important. Betsy, did you have something?
I'm giving you the 5-minute.
Oh, the
warning.
okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
no.
That's my
Then-
hook.
I shouldn't hold up both.
and I was watching, I'm watching the clock
Yeah.
too, so I have one last
Yeah,
one last
please.
thing that I want to bring up, you know, because we've had the Forest Service in here, the BLM, you know, there was a lot of disruption in the community when everything started to happen federally. But when we were back there in March, you know, I just want everybody to know that all of the firefighter positions none of those were cut, because that was a big scare that everybody thought everything was going to get cut, which they weren't. So thank you guys, all of you, for that, the administration. all those positions were filled, and if they weren't filled, they were being filled. But really, as far as the cuts to the Forest Service and/or the BLM, can you speak to anything on that front?
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner. You're right that there have not been any cuts to my knowledge of firefighters, wildland firefighters. There have, however, been some cuts to those who support some of our wildland firefighters and who help manage the forests and reduce that fuel load. My big picture take is I support the president's efforts with DOGE and making government more efficient. I think that's important. I think if you talk to anyone, for example, at the Forest Service or in government, federal government, they will tell you that there are efficiencies that can and must be made. We can realize dramatic savings. We just need to make sure that they're in the right spots. And the individuals that we should be cutting are not the people that are on the ground, the boots on the ground, that are managing our forests and supporting our firefighters. And so I will tell you, we've been working with the administration and targeting some of making sure that we're hiring people back in those spots who are actually doing the work on the ground to protect our forests, protect our watersheds, reduce that fuel load, reduce that fire danger. I am concerned about what this summer looks like from a fire perspective, and I hope that that doesn't come to fruition. We'll have to see. But part of the problem isn't, so we need to make sure that these cuts are made in the right spot. And the administration is open and willing to, we've already actually worked to get some individuals hired back. I'd be happy to see what we could do to make sure that the right people are in the right place. I will tell you that also part of the problem is a systemic problem when it comes to land management in NEPA and tying the hands of our land managers when it comes to responsibly managing our forests and public lands. And that's why legislation like the Fix Our Forest Act is a right step when it comes to this public policy issue. So yes, it's resources. Yes, we need to make sure that we have those resources in the right place. We can use them more efficiently, but we need to make sure also that on the other end of things, we're not tying the hands of the people who are on the ground that are helping to manage those forests responsibly, and to avoid what could be a catastrophe. And I'm looking at your emergency services guys. I say that because I hope that we're not. I hope to see you just in a social context in the coming summer, and that we're not in a crisis situation. But we can certainly the overall effort and direction I support. We just need to make sure that we're making those cuts in the right spot.
Okay.
And if it would be okay, Commissioner, if I could just say, just before I get the hook to head out, I would also just want to point out that some of the issues that I heard from people here in Montezuma County when I was running for office that were important, first and foremost, one of them was securing the border. And I can tell you that we have worked hard, along with President Trump, to do everything we can to secure that border. I can report that crossings are down dramatically. I was down at the border in Nogales, Arizona, last month on a visit to see Customs, to see Border Patrol, and the number of crossings is dramatically decreased. And we're also doing our part in Congress to make sure that we follow up on the changes that need to be made to secure our border. We've passed the Lake and Riley Act. We're working to make sure that law enforcement and Border Patrol have the resources that they need when it comes to protecting our border. We've also passed legislation, the Halt Fentanyl Act, making sure that we stop the scourge of fentanyl that's coming across our border, that's poisoning our citizens here in Colorado's 3rd District. We've also been working hard to overturn what we believe are bad Biden-era regulations when it comes to energy. Bad energy policy effectively acts as a hidden tax on every single person here in Montezuma County. You know that, and I know that, and so we're doing what we can to make sure that we push back and reverse those poorly thought out regulations that are effectively operating as a hidden tax on people here. The cost of energy is a hidden tax on every single thing in Montezuma County here, from the cost of housing to obviously the cost of energy, filling up your tank of gas. So doing what we can to lower those energy costs, to advance that, what I think is a responsible energy dominance agenda that the president has outlined, is something that we take seriously in Congress, and doing so in an environmentally responsible way. I say this as somebody that believes in conservation, that believes in environmentalism, leaving the planet better than what we have it right now. There's no better place than to develop resources, energy resources responsibly, mining resources, than right here in the 3rd Congressional District. And that's something that I believe strongly. We talked about the Forest Service and public lands management and those cuts. Making sure that we have the resources in the right place is something that's important for me, and I need your help in that regard. know that you all should, you guys have my direct, Commissioner Lindsay, you need to have my cell phone number as well. The best way, most efficient way is to reach out to Betsy Bear, but just know, my district director, but just know that you have a direct line to me. And through you, the people of Montezuma County have a direct line to me. If there's ever any issues that come up that need my attention, we'll get on it right away. And I will tell you that it's an honor and a pleasure to work with all of you, and I look forward to it. I'm new, still getting my sea legs under me in Congress, but I know that with the help of great public elected officials like the members of this county commission, that we're going to do great things for Montezuma County, for Southwest Colorado, and for our country. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you in the coming weeks and months and years.
We
Well,
hope
thank-
to see you again.
Many times.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, it's nice having somebody come down here in Montezuma County and visit with us specifically. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate having your cell phone number. And just so that the public knows, this guy does respond. I mean, he's pretty responsive. I realize you have a pretty taxing schedule back there, so I'm pretty lenient, but I think within 48 hours, he's always responded to me on everything I've ever sent to him, and I greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll let Betsy give you the hook, and we'll get out of here. But again, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Commissioner. So good to see you again.
Good
Hey,
to see
Commissioner,
you.
great to see you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.